Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Facade of Perfection. Marcus Hawthorne's fingers traced the delicate gears of an 18th-century pocket watch as the morning light filtered through his workshop windows. The brass components gleamed under his magnifying glass, each tooth and spring telling its own story of time's passage. At 38, he had built Hawthorne timepieces into more than just a business. It was his legacy, a testament to the craftsmanship his grandfather had brought from England during the Second World War. "Sir?" Margaret Bennett's voice interrupted his concentration. The housekeeper stood in the doorway, her weathered face bearing an expression he couldn't quite read. "There's something you should see." Marcus set down his tools with practiced care. "What is it, Maggie?" She approached his workbench, pulling an envelope from her apron pocket. "I found this under the kitchen door while bringing in the groceries. Well, you should read it yourself." The paper felt oddly heavy in his hands. Marcus unfolded it, scanning the anonymous message within. His expression remained neutral, but his jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Thank you, Maggie. I'll handle this. Should I inform Mrs. Hawthorne?" "No," Marcus said, tucking the note into his vest pocket. "Let's not trouble Victoria with anonymous letters. She has enough on her plate managing our property portfolio." Maggie hesitated, then nodded. "As you wish, sir." She turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Mr. Hawthorne, be careful. Things haven't felt right lately." Marcus watched her go, considering her words. She wasn't wrong. Subtle changes had been creeping into his life over the past year. Victoria's late-night phone calls, hushed conversations that ceased when he entered rooms, mysterious appointments with an interior designer he'd never met. He dismissed these oddities, attributing them to the natural evolution of a 5-year marriage. He returned to the pocket watch, but his focus had shifted. The anonymous note burned in his pocket like a hot coal. Its warning was vague yet specific enough to raise alarms. "Your trust is misplaced. Watch the numbers. Time is running out." The morning stretched into afternoon as Marcus restored the timepiece, each adjustment precise and purposeful. His thoughts wandered to his wedding day, remembering how Victoria had captivated Willow Creek's society pages. The union of old money and working-class craftsmanship had seemed perfect, her family's real estate empire complementing his dedication to preserving historical artifacts. Dr. Evelyn Carter's arrival broke his reverie. His childhood friend entered without knocking, as she had done since they were teenagers. "Marcus, do you have a moment?" He recognized the tension in her voice. "For you? Always." He gestured to the chair beside his workbench. "What brings my favorite doctor to my humble workshop?" Evelyn sat, her medical bag clutched tightly in her lap. "I saw something today that concerned me. At the clinic." She paused, choosing her words carefully. Victoria came in for a prescription refill. "She hasn't mentioned any health issues," Marcus said, his hands stilling on the pocket watch. "No, she wouldn't have." Evelyn leaned forward. "Marcus, the medication she's taking, it's typically prescribed for anxiety and stress. High doses. And she's been getting them filled at multiple pharmacies." Marcus absorbed this information silently, his expression hardening. "How long? Based on our records?" "At least 6 months." Evelyn watched him closely. "There's more." "She wasn't alone." "The interior designer?" "Cameron Drake. The developer who's been buying up properties around your workshop." Evelyn's voice dropped lower. They seemed familiar with each other. Marcus stood abruptly, moving to the window. The Victorian mansion he shared with Victoria perched on the hill above town, its manicured gardens a testament to his wife's obsession with appearances. "Tell me everything you saw, Evelyn. Leave nothing out." As his friend detailed her observations, Marcus's mind worked like the precise mechanisms he restored daily. Pieces began falling into place. Victoria's distraction, the anonymous note, the increasing frequency of business meetings that kept her away from home. "What will you do?" Evelyn asked when she finished. Marcus turned from the window, his face set in lines of steel. "Nothing. Yet." He retrieved a vintage watch from his safe, one he'd been saving for Victoria's upcoming birthday. "Tonight, we celebrate my birthday dinner as planned. I'll play my part in this charade a while longer." "Marcus." Evelyn rose, concern evident in her expression. "Don't do anything rash." His laugh held no warmth. Rash? No. Everything I do will be carefully considered. He checked his pocket watch. Another hour until he needed to head home. But make no mistake, Evelyn. If what we suspect is true, there will be consequences. The setting sun painted Willow Creek in deceptively peaceful hues as Marcus drove home that evening. The watch box sat on the passenger seat, wrapped in expensive paper that matched Victoria's favorite shade of emerald. His wife greeted him at the door, her smile practiced, her eyes distant. "Happy birthday, darling," she said, leading him to the dining room. Candles flickered on the table, casting dancing shadows across fine china and crystal glasses. Marcus played his role perfectly, commenting on the wine, complimenting the food. He watched Victoria throughout dinner, noting how her fingers trembled slightly when reaching for her water glass, how her laughter held a brittle edge. "I have something for you," she said as dessert plates were cleared away. She retrieved a small package from the sideboard, placing it before him. Marcus unwrapped it slowly, maintaining his facade of ignorant contentment. Inside lay a single sheet of paper, an eviction notice, bearing Victoria's signature and the letterhead of Langley and Associates. 30 days, Victoria said, her voice steady now. "The house is in my name, as is your workshop. Consider this your severance package." Marcus stared at the document, his expression unchanging. Years of working with delicate mechanisms had taught him the value of steady hands and careful movements. He folded the notice precisely, tucking it into his breast pocket alongside the anonymous warning he'd received earlier. "I see," he said quietly. "May I ask what prompted this generous decision?" Victoria's mask slipped for just a moment, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features before her composure returned. "I need space to pursue new opportunities." Marcus nodded, rising from his chair with deliberate calm. "Of course." He retrieved the wrapped watch from his jacket. "Happy early birthday, Victoria. I do hope you'll think of me when you open it." He left her sitting at the dining table, the untouched gift box a silent accusation before her. In his workshop that night, Marcus began his research. Financial records, property transfers, emails between Victoria and Richard Langley, each piece of evidence carefully cataloged and analyzed. Hours passed as he built a timeline of betrayal. The surveillance photos of his daily routine, taken, told their own story. Victoria and Cameron had planned this meticulously, documenting his movements, preparing for every contingency. As dawn approached, Marcus sat amid the scattered evidence of his unraveling life. The man who had walked into that birthday dinner, trusting, content with his lot, was gone. In his place sat someone harder, someone who viewed the world through the lens of precise mechanisms and calculated responses. He pulled out his phone, dialing a familiar number. "Evelyn, I need your help." And contact Richard Langley's former partner, the one who retired after that ethics investigation. He paused, glancing at the eviction notice on his desk. It's time to start dismantling some facades. The first rays of sunlight crept into his workshop as Marcus began planning his response. Victoria had chosen her moment carefully, striking on his birthday. She would learn that her timing was a mistake, one that would give him exactly enough days to ensure her destruction coincided perfectly with their wedding anniversary. Chapter 2. The Unraveling. Victoria's birthday dinner marked the beginning of Marcus's transformation. He sat in his workshop the following morning. The eviction notice spread before him like a battle plan. The phone call from Evelyn had confirmed his suspicions about Cameron Drake's involvement. "He's been seen with her at the Metropolitan," Evelyn reported, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Private dining room, very intimate. The staff says they're regulars." Marcus made a note in his leather-bound notebook. "How long?" "At least 3 months, according to the maitre d'." "Marcus." Evelyn hesitated. "There's more. Cameron's been systematically buying properties around your workshop. He's using shell companies to mask his involvement." "Send me everything you have," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "And Evelyn? Thank you." He ended the call and turned to his computer, pulling up property records for the historic district. The pattern emerged quickly, a web of purchases radiating outward from Hawthorne timepieces, each transaction obscured by layers of corporate entities. A knock at the door interrupted his research. "Come in, Maggie." The housekeeper entered, carrying a stack of mail. These came for Mrs. Hawthorne. She placed them on his desk, her expression troubled. They're from Langley and Associates. Marcus examined the envelopes. You've been with us 15 years, Maggie. What do you know? She's been taking calls in the garden house, Maggie said quietly. Late at night. I've heard discussions about development plans. Your name comes up often. And Cameron Drake? Maggie's lips tightened. He's been here. When you're at trade shows or auctions, they meet in the study. Marcus's fingers drummed against his desk, a rhythmic pattern matching the ticking of nearby clocks. I need you to be my eyes and ears, Maggie. Can you do that? Already am, sir. She pulled a small notebook from her apron pocket. Dates, times, visitors. Been keeping track since things started feeling wrong. He took the notebook, a smile touching his lips. You're worth your weight in gold, Maggie. After she left, Marcus began cross-referencing her notes with his financial records. The pattern became clearer. Each of Victoria's interior design appointments coincided with major property acquisitions by Cameron's shell companies. A text message from an unknown number lit up his phone. Check your email. Arthur Pembroke, Richard Langley's former partner, had come through. The email contained dozens of documents, internal memos, draft contracts, surveillance reports. Marcus's jaw clenched as he read through them. They had been watching him for months, documenting his routine. He dialed another number. Dr. Carter's office. Evelyn's receptionist answered. It's Marcus. I need to see her. Now. 20 minutes later, he sat in Evelyn's private office, spreading documents across her desk. Look at this, he said, pointing to a series of photographs. They've mapped every aspect of my life. Workshop hours, client meetings, even my morning coffee route. Evelyn studied the photos. This is professional work. Private investigators. Former military. According to Arthur's notes, Marcus tapped a surveillance report. They've been building a case for the eviction, documenting every possible vulnerability. Marcus, Evelyn said softly, what are you going to do? He looked up, his eyes cold. I'm going to dismantle their entire operation, piece by piece, starting with Cameron's development plans. How? Marcus pulled out his notebook. First, we exposed the shell companies. Arthur's provided evidence of similar schemes in other cities, displaced businesses, destroyed communities. We leak it to select journalists, create doubt among his investors. That won't be enough, Evelyn warned. Victoria's family owns half the town. Their influence runs deep, which is why we target their reputation first. Marcus's voice hardened. Victoria's built her life on social status. We start there, planting seeds of doubt among her circle. You've seen her medical records, anxiety, stress medication. What happens when rumors begin circulating about her stability? Evelyn frowned. I can't disclose patient information. You don't have to. Maggie's notes detail erratic behavior, late-night arguments, mysterious meetings. The right whispers in the right ears will do the rest. As they talked, Marcus's phone buzzed with another message from Arthur. Found something interesting. Drake's got gambling debts. Big ones. Meeting. Marcus showed Evelyn the message. See? The pieces are falling into place. He left Evelyn's office with a clear plan forming. Back in his workshop, he began organizing his counterattack. The first step was securing his assets, accounts Victoria couldn't touch, documents she couldn't access. A knock on the workshop door announced Richard Langley himself. The lawyer entered cautiously, his usual confidence dimmed. Marcus, we need to talk. About the eviction notice? Marcus didn't look up from his work. Or about how you've been helping Victoria and Cameron plan my removal? Richard paled. It's not personal. Just business. Marcus finally raised his eyes, fixing Richard with a stare that made the lawyer step back. Everything is personal, Richard. Every betrayal, lie, scheme you've helped them craft. He stood slowly. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the forged documents? The illegal property transfers? How did you? I have friends too, Richard. Friends who remember why your partner retired. Marcus moved around his workbench. Now, you have a choice. Help me expose their operation, or I ensure the ethics board receives evidence of every questionable deal you've ever made. Richard swallowed hard. They'll destroy me. They're going to destroy you anyway. Marcus's voice was ice. Cameron's empire is built on sand, and when it falls, you'll be buried with it. Unless? Marcus smiled, a predator's expression. Unless you help me ensure they fall first. After Richard left, Marcus returned to his planning. The lawyer's cooperation would be useful, but he couldn't be trusted completely. No, this operation required multiple layers, multiple contingencies. He called Arthur, arranging a meeting to discuss Cameron's gambling debts. Then he contacted several of his high-end clients, collectors who moved in Victoria's social circles. Seeds of doubt needed planting, rumors needed starting. As night fell, Marcus stood at his workshop window, watching lights come on in the mansion on the hill. Victoria would be home now, perhaps meeting with Cameron, planning their next move. They thought they held all the power, that their eviction notice had left him defenseless. He pulled out his phone one last time, sending a message to Evelyn. It begins tomorrow. Be ready. The game they had started would end on his terms, not theirs. They had chosen his birthday to strike, believing it would humiliate him. Instead, they had given him the perfect timeline. 30 days until their wedding anniversary, 30 days to orchestrate their complete destruction. Marcus returned to his workbench, where an antique clock waited for restoration. As he worked, his mind refined each aspect of his plan. Victoria and Cameron had built their scheme on deception and betrayal. He would repay them in kind, but with one crucial difference. His vengeance would be executed with the same he brought to his craft, each move as carefully calibrated as the timepieces he restored. Chapter 3. The First Move. Marcus's transformation became evident in the subtle changes to his workshop routine. Where once he had worked in comfortable solitude, now his space hummed with purposeful activity. Maps and documents covered one wall, connected by red strings that tracked property acquisitions and business relationships. His workbench, typically reserved for timepiece restoration, now held stacks of financial records and surveillance photos. They're meeting again, Maggie reported, entering with her morning update. Third time this week. Mr. Drake arrived after you left for the antique fair. Marcus noted the information in his leather-bound notebook. And Victoria? Agitated. She's been making calls all morning, arguing with someone about property valuations. Maggie hesitated. Sir, they went into your private study. His hand stilled on the page. Did they access my safe? They tried. I heard them discussing it. Maggie's expression hardened. I may have accidentally mentioned that you changed the combination last month. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Well done, Maggie. That information will make them nervous. He reached into his desk drawer, removing an envelope. I need you to ensure this reaches Victoria's father. Hand deliver it to his office. The envelope contained carefully selected documents suggesting Victoria's involvement in questionable property deals. Mr. Sterling should find these financial records. Enlightening. After Maggie left, Marcus received a call from Arthur Pembroke. Drake's gambling debts are worse than we thought, the former lawyer reported. He owes money to some dangerous people in Chicago. That's why he's pushing so hard for this development project. Excellent, Marcus replied, making notes. Send me the details. And Arthur? Start reaching out to his former business partners. I want to know about every failed project, every investor he's burned. The next phase of his plan required timing. Marcus arranged a meeting with Richard Langley at a small cafe downtown, knowing Victoria's friends would spot them together. The lawyer arrived looking nervous, his usual polished demeanor cracking under pressure. The ethics board is asking questions, Richard said, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. Someone sent them files about the property transfers. Marcus sipped his coffee calmly. How unfortunate. I imagine Victoria won't be pleased when she discovers her legal foundation is crumbling. Are you behind this? Richard demanded, his voice shaking. Behind what? Marcus's tone remained neutral. I'm simply a craftsman whose wife served him with an eviction notice. Though I must admit, the timing of these revelations is interesting. He left Richard stewing in his anxiety and headed to Dr. Carter's clinic. Evelyn had news about Victoria's recent behavior at social functions. She's becoming erratic, Evelyn reported in her private office. Last night at the Historical Society Gala, She had an outburst when someone mentioned property development. Mrs. Henderson said she was ranting about betrayal and time running out. Marcus nodded, adding this information to his notebook. And Drake? Missed 3 important meetings this week. His investors are getting nervous. Evelyn leaned forward. Marcus, I've heard rumors that the bank is reviewing his loan applications. Something about irregularities in his financial statements. Anonymous tips can be very effective, Marcus replied. He shared his latest findings about Cameron's gambling debts. His entire empire is built on borrowed money and false promises. What happens to Victoria's plans when her chosen partner can't deliver? The pieces of his revenge were falling into place. Through carefully planted information and strategic pressure points, he was creating fissures in Victoria and Cameron's alliance. Each day brought new reports of their growing paranoia and desperation. Marcus spent his evenings reviewing security footage from cameras he'd secretly installed around his workshop. The recordings showed Victoria and Cameron visiting during business hours, inspecting the building and discussing renovation plans. Their confidence in their scheme was evident in their body language and casual dismissal of his craft. "We'll gut this place," Cameron had said, gesturing dismissively at Marcus's workbenches. "Turn it into a high-end boutique. These old buildings are worth more as trendy retail spaces." Victoria's response had been equally revealing. "Once the eviction is finalized, we can move quickly. Marcus is too trusting to fight back effectively." Their words fueled Marcus's determination. He contacted more of Cameron's former business associates, gathering testimonies about failed projects and broken promises. The evidence painted a picture of a serial fraudster who left devastation in his wake. Through Maggie's continued surveillance, Marcus learned that Victoria and Cameron's relationship was showing signs of strain. Their meetings became more heated, their arguments more frequent. The pressure he was applying began showing results. "She threw a vase at him yesterday," Maggie reported, "called him a liability. He said something about promises she'd made about financing." Marcus used this information to further his plan. Anonymous notes sent to both parties hinted at betrayal and hidden agendas. He watched with satisfaction as their paranoia grew, each blaming the other for the mounting problems in their scheme. The final phase of his initial strategy involved Victoria's social standing. Through carefully orchestrated encounters and strategic information leaks, he began dismantling her reputation among Willow Creek's elite. Questions about her stability and integrity spread through whispered conversations at charity events and social gatherings. As the first week after the eviction notice drew to a close, Marcus sat in his workshop, reviewing his progress. Victoria's carefully constructed world was beginning to crumble, and Cameron's financial house of cards showed signs of collapse. But this was just the beginning. He picked up the eviction notice from his desk, running his fingers over Victoria's signature. She had given him 30 days, thinking it would break him. Instead, she had provided the perfect time frame for his revenge. Each day brought him closer to their wedding anniversary, when all his careful planning would come to fruition. A text from Evelyn lit up his phone. "Victoria's father wants to meet tomorrow morning at his office." Marcus smiled, knowing the documents he'd sent through Maggie had hit their mark. The Sterling family patriarch was about to discover just how deeply his daughter's betrayal ran. The destruction of Victoria's support system was proceeding exactly as planned. He returned to his workbench, where an antique pocket watch awaited his attention. As he disassembled the timepiece with practiced care, Marcus reflected on how his restoration work had prepared him for this mission of vengeance. Both required patience, precision, and an understanding of how complex mechanisms work together. Victoria and Cameron had underestimated him, seeing only the surface of the craftsman they planned to destroy. They would soon learn that beneath his quiet exterior lay a man capable of dismantling their lives with the same methodical skill he brought to his work. The game was far from over, and Marcus Hawthorne intended to savor every moment of their downfall. Chapter 4. Shadows of the Past. Marcus sat in Arthur Pembroke's study, surrounded by decades of investigative files. The retired journalist pushed a thick folder across his desk. "You might find this interesting," Arthur said, tapping the folder with a weathered finger. "Victoria's family history. Things they'd rather keep buried." Marcus opened the file, scanning newspaper clippings and handwritten notes. "Tell me, The Sterling dynasty isn't as pristine as they pretend. Victoria's childhood was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Her parents treated her like a show pony, parading her at social events, measuring her worth in business connections made. Documents detailed Victoria's progression through finishing schools and debutante balls. Each achievement came with strings attached, each failure met with icy disapproval. Photos showed a young Victoria, her smile practiced, her posture perfect, her eyes haunted. And Cameron Drake? Marcus asked, setting aside Victoria's file. Arthur's laugh held no humor. That's where it gets interesting. He pulled another folder from his archives. Born Marcus Williams in Chicago. Changed his name after his first bankruptcy. He's reinvented himself more times than I can count. Marcus examined records of Cameron's previous ventures, failed developments, angry investors, communities left in ruins. His gambling habit? Started in college. Got worse each time he nearly lost everything. It's his pressure valve, the thing he turns to when control slips away. Arthur leaned forward. But here's what you can use. He owes money to people who don't forgive debts. They've been tracking him across state lines. Marcus absorbed this information, his mind calculating angles. These investors he burned, they testify? Given the right motivation? They're eager to see him fall. Arthur smiled grimly. I've maintained contact with several. They're waiting for someone to finally bring him down. The next morning, Marcus met Evelyn at her clinic. She'd been monitoring Victoria's deteriorating mental state through her medical contacts. The anxiety medication isn't helping anymore, Evelyn reported. She's becoming erratic, paranoid. Yesterday, she accused her decorator of spying on her. Marcus nodded. And Cameron? His gambling's escalating. 3 trips to underground poker games this week alone. He lost heavily each time. Perfect. Marcus made notes in his leather book. What about their relationship? Fracturing. They were seen arguing at the Metropolitan. He blamed her for leaked information about the development project. She threatened to cut off funding. Marcus's strategy took shape as he processed this intelligence. Victoria's need for social approval made her vulnerable to public humiliation. Cameron's gambling addiction and fear of poverty could be exploited to destabilize his carefully crafted image. Through Maggie's continued surveillance, Marcus orchestrated his next moves. Anonymous tips to society columnists exposed Victoria's affair with Cameron, timing the revelations for maximum impact. At charity galas and board meetings, whispers spread about the Sterling family's questionable business practices. Victoria's response proved her weakness. She appeared at social functions with increasingly obvious signs of distress. Trembling hands, scattered speech, outbursts of temper. Her attempts to maintain control only highlighted her unraveling. She threw a crystal vase at him, Maggie reported after one particularly volatile argument, called him a parasite who was destroying her family's legacy. Cameron's facade cracked under different pressures. Marcus arranged for his gambling debts to become public knowledge among key investors. The revelation that their trusted developer was hemorrhaging money in underground games sent shockwaves through business circles. Your suspicions were correct, Arthur said during one of their strategy sessions. He's been embezzling from development funds to cover his losses. I have documentation. Marcus used this information to orchestrate meetings between Cameron's past victims. A forum was created where former investors could share their stories, building a case against him. The threat of exposure forced Cameron to divide his attention between damage control and his current schemes. The psychological warfare intensified. Through careful manipulation of their environment, Marcus triggered both Victoria's anxiety and Cameron's gambling compulsion. Sound systems installed in the historic district played frequencies proven to increase stress. Financial records suggesting massive losses appeared on Cameron's desk. Victoria's parents received anonymous packages containing proof of their daughter's betrayal, mortgage documents showing how she'd leveraged family properties to fund Cameron's projects. The Sterling patriarch's reaction was swift and merciless. You stupid girl, he raged during a board meeting. You've risked everything we built for this common con man? Marcus watched from the shadows as his enemies turned on each other. Victoria blamed Cameron for attracting scrutiny. Cameron accused Victoria of sabotaging their plans. Their united front crumbled, revealing the rotting foundation beneath. Through it all, Marcus maintained his workshop routine, presenting a calm exterior while orchestrating their destruction. Each piece of information became a weapon, each revelation a calculated strike against their weakening defenses. "You've changed," Evelyn observed during one of their meetings. "The Marcus I knew would have sought reconciliation. That Marcus died the night she served me divorce papers," he replied, his voice cold. "She and Cameron tried to destroy everything I built. They'll learn the cost of that mistake." As their mental states deteriorated, Victoria and Cameron made increasingly desperate moves. Documents vanished from offices, meetings were forgotten, deadlines missed. Each failure created new opportunities for Marcus to exploit. The transformation of Marcus Hawthorne from trusted craftsman to ruthless strategist was complete. He viewed his enemies' suffering with the same precision he brought to restoring timepieces, each component of their destruction carefully calibrated for maximum effect. Their mistake had been seeing only the surface, a simple watchmaker they could easily destroy. They never understood that his true skill lay in understanding complex mechanisms, in recognizing how pressure applied to one part could shatter the whole. The web he wove around them tightened with each passing day. Victoria's social standing crumbled as former friends distanced themselves from the scandal. Cameron's business empire showed cracks as investors withdrew support. The power they'd wielded against Marcus became the instrument of their own destruction. "You're not just trying to stop their development project," Arthur said during one late-night strategy session. "You're dismantling their entire world." Marcus's smile held no warmth. "They chose their fate when they decided to take everything from me. Now they'll learn that some betrayals can't be forgiven." The ruthlessness he discovered within himself became his greatest asset. Each move was calculated, each strike precise. The gentle craftsman was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true vengeance required patience, planning, and the will to destroy one's enemies completely. Chapter 5. The Counterattack. The attack began without warning. Building inspectors descended on Marcus's workshop, armed with citations for code violations that hadn't existed during previous inspections. Behind them came lawyers bearing cease and desist orders, environmental impact statements, and claims of historic district violations. "They're targeting your foundation," Richard Langley warned during a clandestine meeting. "Victoria's using her connections in the Preservation Society. Cameron's got the building department in his pocket." Marcus studied the stack of legal documents. Each charge seemed designed to strip away another layer of his defenses. And the banking situation? Frozen accounts, called-in loans. Richard wiped sweat from his forehead. "They're trying to starve you out." The pressure mounted as suppliers began canceling deliveries. Longtime customers withdrew orders, citing concerns about the workshop's future. Even Evelyn faced professional threats, anonymous letters to the hospital board questioning her judgment. "They're suggesting my association with you compromises patient care," she reported, her voice tight with anger. "The board's launching an ethics review." Marcus absorbed each blow, his mind already calculating counterstrikes. He converted his operation mobile, using vintage delivery vans as mobile workshops. Each vehicle contained essential tools and materials, allowing him to continue serving trusted clients while evading Victoria's surveillance. The most vicious attack targeted his guardianship of Lily. Anonymous tips to child services painted him as unstable, potentially dangerous. Investigators appeared at his door, armed with questions designed to destroy his reputation. "They're trying to take her," Maggie warned. "Victoria's been seen meeting with family court judges." Marcus's response showed no trace of the craftsman's gentle nature. Through Arthur's contacts, he obtained proof of similar tactics used by Cameron in other cities, evidence of systematic harassment disguised as regulatory concern. "We leak this to national media," Arthur advised. "Show them as predators targeting small businesses under the guise of preservation." The counteroffensive began with a series of carefully placed stories. Local papers ran exposés on corruption in the building department. Regional news outlets investigated the Preservation Society's ties to development interests. Each revelation forced Victoria and Cameron to divert resources from their attack. Marcus established a network of safe houses, converting abandoned buildings into secondary workshops. Local business owners, recognizing their common enemy, provided cover and support. The community's response surprised Victoria and Cameron, who'd expected Marcus to stand alone. They miscalculated, Arthur observed. They thought destroying your workshop would break you. Instead, they've given you allies. The Child Services investigation backfired spectacularly when Marcus transformed his workshop into an educational center. Students from troubled backgrounds learned trade skills alongside business ethics. Community leaders rallied to his defense, recognizing the program's value. Let them investigate, Marcus told his lawyers. Each inspection shows another group of kids learning valuable skills. Each visit documents our positive impact. Financial warfare required more subtle tactics. Marcus created a fictional buyer for his workshop, complete with forged documentation suggesting an astronomical purchase price. Victoria and Cameron diverted significant resources trying to block the sale, weakening their position elsewhere. They're getting desperate, Richard reported. Cameron's trying to secure additional financing, but his gambling debts are scaring away investors. Through Arthur's international contacts, Marcus established offshore accounts and shadow corporations. While Victoria and Cameron focused on his visible assets, he quietly transferred his true wealth beyond their reach. The Preservation Society's campaign crumbled when evidence emerged of similar tactics used against other historic businesses. Former victims came forward, describing patterns of harassment and forced sales. Public opinion shifted as people recognized the threat to their community's character. Your grandfather built something special here, an elderly resident told Marcus during a community meeting. We won't let them destroy that legacy. Marcus's workshop became a symbol of resistance. Local artisans offered their skills, helping maintain equipment and fulfill orders. Customers who'd withdrawn their business returned, often bringing new clients. The attempted isolation backfired, strengthening his position in unexpected ways. Lily's response to the attacks revealed her strength. Rather than being intimidated, she began documenting everything, photographing inspections, recording interviews, building a case against their persecutors. They think they can bully us into submission, she told Marcus. Let's show them how wrong they are. The workshop's transformation accelerated. What began as a simple restoration business evolved into a community hub. Training programs expanded, offering opportunities to those Victoria's social circle had long ignored. Each successful graduate became another voice against the development project. Marcus watched his enemies' frustration grow as their attacks failed to land. Victoria's attempts to leverage social connections met increasing resistance. Cameron's financial pressures mounted as investors questioned his judgment. They're turning on each other, Maggie reported after overhearing another argument. He blames her for the community backlash. She blames him for their mounting legal costs. The workshop, meant to be Marcus's vulnerability, became his fortress. Each failed attack provided new opportunities to expose their tactics. Their strategy of overwhelming force revealed their own weaknesses, creating openings for precise counterstrikes. You've built something they can't tear down, Evelyn observed during a rare quiet moment. Not with legal papers or social pressure. Marcus's smile held the satisfaction of a craftsman appreciating fine work. They thought they were destroying a simple business. They never understood what they were really attacking. The battle for Willow Creek Soul transformed both sides. Victoria's social mask cracked under pressure, revealing the desperate perfectionist beneath. Cameron's smooth facade dissolved as financial pressures mounted, exposing the gambling addict's core fears. Yet Marcus emerged stronger, his initial defensive position evolving into something more powerful. The network of allies and resources he'd built in response to their attacks created a foundation they couldn't shake. You've changed the game, Arthur said, reviewing their progress. They're still fighting the watchmaker they thought they knew. They haven't realized who they're really facing. The ruthlessness Marcus discovered in himself found perfect expression in this fight. Each countermove demonstrated his new nature, careful, precise, and utterly without mercy for those who'd betrayed him. Chapter 6. The Final Pieces. Marcus studied Cameron Drake's confidential development proposal spread across his workshop table. The documents, obtained through Arthur's contacts, revealed an ambitious plan to transform Willow Creek's historic district into a luxury resort complex. Look at these investor lists, Arthur said, pointing to familiar names. Half of Victoria's social circle has money tied up in this project. But here's the interesting part. He flipped to the financial projections. Without this development, Cameron's entire empire collapses. Marcus absorbed the information, adding it to his mental blueprint of destruction. And Victoria's role? She's mortgaged family properties as collateral. Arthur's grin held no warmth. Her parents don't know. If this fails, the sterling legacy gets carved up by creditors. The plan formed in Marcus's mind like clockwork, precise, interconnected, devastating. He established the timepiece protocol, converting abandoned buildings throughout the historic district into specialized workshops. Each location served multiple purposes: legitimate business operations, community employment, and physical obstacles to development. They can't demolish active businesses without public backlash, Marcus explained to his growing network of allies. Each workshop becomes another barrier to their plans. Simultaneously, he orchestrated meetings between Cameron's investors and victims of his previous schemes. Arthur's journalistic credentials provided cover for these gatherings, where former partners shared stories of betrayal and financial ruin. My retirement savings vanished in his last development, a former investor testified. He promised guaranteed returns, then disappeared when the project collapsed. The evidence mounted. More victims came forward, each story adding pressure to Cameron's already strained relationships with current investors. Key backers began withdrawing support, citing ethical concerns that masked their growing fear of association. Victoria's desperation peaked when Marcus anonymously forwarded proof of her secret mortgages to her parents. The sterling patriarch's rage shook the foundations of her social world. "How dare you risk generations of wealth on this scheme?" he thundered during a family meeting. "Have you lost your mind?" Marcus implemented Operation Pendulum next, using his expertise in clock acoustics to wage psychological warfare. Hidden sound systems throughout the historic district emitted precisely calculated frequencies, causing equipment malfunctions and worker discomfort at Cameron's construction sites. Third crane breakdown this week, Maggie reported, after observing their frustrated attempts at repairs. Engineers can't explain it. Insurance rates are skyrocketing. Through Evelyn's medical insights, Marcus refined his attacks on Victoria's mental state. Her anxiety responded to specific triggers, sounds, colors, patterns. He ensured she encountered these during crucial meetings and public appearances. She fled the Preservation Society fundraiser in tears, a society columnist reported to Arthur. Something about the background music triggering a panic attack. Marcus turned Cameron's need for success against him, planting false leads about lucrative opportunities in other cities. Each time Cameron pursued these phantom deals, anonymous tips reached Victoria about his whereabouts. "He's meeting developers in Chicago," one message read. "Funny, he told you he was meeting bank executives in Boston." Their relationship deteriorated under the strain. Arguments erupted in public places, destroying the image they'd crafted so carefully. Victoria's social circle watched with growing horror as their perfect partnership imploded. "You promised this development was guaranteed," Victoria screamed during one confrontation. "Now my family's fortune is at risk because you can't control your gambling." Marcus observed their destruction from his workshop, each piece of his revenge mechanism functioning perfectly. The betrayers who tried to destroy him now faced their own annihilation, brought about by their own flaws and his careful exploitation of them. "They never understood what they were dealing with," he told Evelyn during one of their strategy sessions. "They saw a simple craftsman. They should have looked closer at what I actually do." "What's that?" she asked. "I restore complex mechanisms. I understand how pressure on the right points can shatter the whole system." His smile carried no warmth. "They're learning that lesson now." As Act 2 drew to a close, Marcus's position was secure. His workshop thrived despite their attacks, his network of allies grew stronger, and his enemies' resources dwindled. Victoria and Cameron's attempt to destroy him had instead given him the perfect opportunity to orchestrate their downfall. The eviction notice that had started this war sat in his desk drawer, a reminder of their fatal miscalculation. They'd given him 30 days, thinking it would break him. Instead, they'd provided the perfect time frame for his revenge. Marcus watched from his workshop window as Victoria and Cameron's latest public argument drew concerned stares from passers-by. Their carefully constructed facade was crumbling, revealing the rot beneath. His transformation from trusted craftsman to ruthless avenger was complete, and the final act of his revenge approached with the precision of a finely tuned timepiece. Chapter 7. The Anniversary Revelation. Marcus checked the time on his grandfather's pocket watch, 9:45 a.m. In 15 minutes, Lily's exposé would hit newsstands across the country. He stood in his workshop, surrounded by the steady ticking of dozens of timepieces, each marking the countdown to Victoria and Cameron's destruction. "The papers are ready for distribution." Arthur Pembroke's voice crackled through the phone. National outlets picked up the story. Local papers are running companion pieces. And the evidence packets? Being delivered to investors as we speak. Your USB drives contain enough dirt to bury them 10 times over. Marcus placed a hand on the antique grandfather clock he'd been restoring. Its brass pendulum swung, each movement bringing him closer to the moment he'd engineered for months. Make sure Victoria's parents receive their copy first. At precisely 10 a.m., Lily's article broke. "Time's up." The Clockwork Conspiracy dominated headlines, the story spreading through news networks and social media like wildfire. Marcus watched his phone light up with notifications as #WillowCreekTruth began trending. "Mr. Hawthorne," Maggie called from the doorway. "You should see this." She held up her tablet, showing Victoria's increasingly frantic social media posts. The former socialite's desperate attempts at damage control devolved into incoherent accusations as more evidence surfaced. "She's calling an emergency press conference," Maggie reported. "Her father just publicly cut all ties with her." Marcus nodded, unmoved by Victoria's panic. "Right on schedule. Has Cameron made any statements?" "He's not answering calls. His office claims he's unavailable for comment." The morning's revelations were just the beginning. At noon, Marcus's carefully prepared evidence packets reached their targets. Each investor in Cameron's project received irrefutable proof of criminal activity, along with audio recordings that revealed the developer's violent tendencies. "The Mitchell Group just pulled out," Arthur reported. "Others are following suit. Cameron's empire is imploding." Marcus attended the Historic Preservation Board meeting at 3 o'clock, watching impassively as his lawyers presented evidence of environmental violations. The board members' faces turned ashen as soil samples and drone footage revealed the true cost of Cameron's planned development. "These contamination levels are criminal," the board chairman declared. "All development permits are suspended pending investigation." Outside, crowds gathered as Marcus's network of workshops transformed into protest centers. The sound systems he'd installed broadcast testimonials from victims of similar schemes, their voices echoing through streets that Cameron had hoped to destroy. Victoria's press conference proved catastrophic. Her composed facade cracked under questioning, years of calculated manipulation giving way to raw desperation. "This is a conspiracy," she shrieked, mascara running as she jabbed a finger at reporters. "Marcus is behind all of this. He's trying to destroy me." Marcus watched the footage from his workshop, noting how her expensive suit hung loose on her frame, how her manicured hands trembled as she gripped the podium. The polished socialite who'd served him divorce papers was gone, replaced by someone coming apart at the seams. "Sir," Maggie interrupted. "Cameron's been spotted at the private airfield." "No need to follow him," Marcus said. "His creditors will handle that." True to his prediction, Cameron never made it past security. His accounts frozen and assets seized. The developer found himself trapped in the web Marcus had woven. By evening, he was negotiating with authorities, desperately trying to avoid prosecution. Marcus received updates throughout the day, each report confirming another piece of his plan falling into place. Victoria's social circle abandoned her completely after recordings of her conspiring with Cameron surfaced. The Sterling family's public denouncement left her without resources or allies. "She's checked into Pine Grove," Evelyn informed him, referring to the private psychiatric facility outside town. "Complete breakdown. Her doctors say she's alternating between rage and catatonia." Marcus placed the eviction notice Victoria had given him in a display case, positioning it among his most intricate timepieces. The document that was meant to destroy him had instead become a trophy marking the beginning of his victory. The grandfather clock in his workshop struck midnight, its deep chimes marking the end of their wedding anniversary. Marcus raised a glass of scotch, savoring the moment as reports continued flowing in. Cameron in custody, Victoria sedated, their carefully constructed world reduced to ashes. He'd done more than survive their betrayal. He'd turned their own weapons against them, using Victoria's social connections and Cameron's business tactics to orchestrate their downfall. The trusting craftsman they tried to destroy had transformed into something far more dangerous. A man who understood that revenge, like clockwork, required perfect timing and absolute precision. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. The media storm following Victoria and Cameron's exposure transformed Willow Creek. Marcus's workshop buzzed with activity as journalists, activists, and community leaders sought his guidance in fighting similar development schemes. 3 more towns have reported identical patterns, Lily announced during their morning briefing. Developers using preservation laws to force out small businesses, mysterious code violations appearing overnight. Marcus reviewed the reports, recognizing Cameron's tactics. Connect these communities with our legal team. Show them how to track the shell companies, follow the money. The Timekeepers Alliance grew from this foundation. Marcus converted his expanded workshop into the organization's headquarters, training others to recognize and resist predatory development practices. Each success strengthened his network of allies. Seattle chapter uncovered another scheme, Arthur reported. Used your methods, followed the property transfers, exposed the fake violations. Saved their entire arts district. Evelyn's medical practice expanded to include support services for displaced business owners and residents. Her research on the health impacts of forced gentrification attracted national attention. The psychological trauma runs deep, she explained during a strategy session. People lose more than buildings. They lose their community, their sense of security. Marcus understood this personally. His own trauma had forged him into someone capable of fighting back. Now he used that strength to protect others, though his ruthlessness remained evident in how he dealt with threats to his new mission. Chicago developers tried bribing our Portland representatives, Lily informed him one morning. Send them the surveillance photos, Marcus replied. Remind them what happened to the last group that tried corrupting our organization. The legal consequences of Victoria and Cameron's scheme created ripples throughout the business world. Richard Langley's law firm collapsed as evidence of systematic fraud emerged. Other conspirators faced criminal charges, their carefully hidden connections exposed by Marcus's investigation. The sterling fortune is being liquidated, Arthur reported. Courts ordered full restitution to victims. Victoria's parents lost everything trying to cover her debts. Marcus watched from his workshop as bailiffs removed furniture from the mansion on the hill. Victoria remained in psychiatric care, her doctors reporting no improvement in her condition. Cameron faced multiple federal indictments, his empire dismantled piece by piece. He tried cutting a deal, Arthur said, offered to testify against other developers. Prosecutors declined, said our evidence was stronger than his testimony. The historic district underwent remarkable changes. Buildings that Cameron had marked for demolition now housed thriving businesses. Marcus's training program graduated its first class of restoration specialists, each student carrying his lessons about craftsmanship and community responsibility. You've built something remarkable, Evelyn observed during one of their evening discussions. This goes beyond revenge now. Marcus nodded, examining a complex timepiece one of his students had restored. They thought destroying my workshop would break me. Instead, they gave me a reason to build something stronger. His relationship with Lily deepened through their shared mission. She combined his strategic thinking with her own passion for justice, becoming a feared investigative journalist who specialized in exposing corruption. Another developer tried threatening our sources, she told him, eyes blazing. I sent him our file on Cameron. He withdrew his project the next day. Marcus approved of her tactics. The ruthlessness he discovered in himself had found new purpose, protecting others from experiencing his betrayal. His reputation grew, not as someone to be feared, but as someone who could teach others to fight back effectively. The Timekeepers Alliance expanded nationally, with chapters opening in cities facing similar threats. Marcus traveled occasionally, sharing his expertise with community groups learning to protect their neighborhoods. They call you the clockmaker, Arthur mentioned, not because of your restoration work, because you can take apart any corrupt scheme, piece by piece. Maggie remained his loyal supporter, managing the growing organization with the same attention to detail she'd once brought to his household. Her network of informants expanded, providing early warnings of new threats to historic communities. Development group from Texas asking questions about riverside properties, she reported one morning. Using Cameron's old tactics, Marcus smiled coldly. Send them our standard package. Photos of Cameron's current accommodation, documentation of Victoria's commitment papers, financial records of their bankruptcies. The group withdrew their inquiries within hours. As weeks passed, Marcus refined his operation. The workshop training program became a model for other communities, combining technical skills with strategies for resisting displacement. His students learned more than craftsmanship. They learned how to recognize and counter the tactics he'd faced. You're building an army, Evelyn observed. I'm teaching them to protect themselves, Marcus corrected. The skills I learned surviving Victoria and Cameron's attack shouldn't go to waste. His methods proved effective. Across the country, communities facing similar threats adopted his strategies. The Timekeepers Alliance became known for its thorough approach to preservation, combining legal action with sophisticated countermeasures against developer tactics. Victoria's fate served as a warning to others who might follow her path. Regular reports from her doctors described a woman trapped in paranoid delusions, unable to accept responsibility for her actions. The sterling name, once synonymous with power in Willow Creek, became a cautionary tale. Cameron's trial revealed the full scope of his crimes. Evidence Marcus had gathered proved instrumental in securing convictions on multiple counts of fraud, racketeering, and environmental violations. The developer's attempts to blame Victoria failed as Marcus's recordings exposed his controlling behavior. 15 years minimum, Arthur reported after sentencing. No chance of early release. His victims testified for hours about lives he'd destroyed. Marcus added the trial transcripts to his archive, another resource for communities fighting similar battles. Each victory strengthened his resolve to continue his work, transforming personal revenge into lasting change. The workshop remained his center, its steady rhythms grounding him as his influence grew. He still restored timepieces, finding peace in the precise movements of gears and springs. But now these skills served a larger purpose, teaching others to understand complex systems and how to affect them. Chapter 9. A New Dawn. Marcus stood in his expanded workshop, watching his newest class of students practice basic restoration techniques. The space had transformed over the past year, growing from a single craftsman studio into a hub of community resistance and education. Denver chapter reports success, Lily announced, entering with her laptop. Used our methods to block a luxury development. Saved 30 small businesses. Marcus examined the intricate mechanism one student was repairing. Show me their documentation. We'll add it to the training materials. The Timekeepers Alliance had evolved beyond his initial vision. What began as his personal revenge now employed dozens of specialists, lawyers, investigators, community organizers. Each brought unique skills to their mission of protecting vulnerable neighborhoods. Los Angeles team needs backup, Maggie reported. Developer using Cameron's old playbook, fake code violations, pressure on local banks. Send Arthur, Marcus decided. Have him bring the Cameron files. Show them exactly how that strategy ends. His reputation had grown beyond Willow Creek. Developers researched their targets more carefully now, withdrawing projects at the first sign of timekeeper involvement. Marcus's name carried weight in boardrooms and community centers alike. They call it the Hawthorne effect, Evelyn told him during their weekly dinner meeting. When developers realize their target community has contacted us, they often abandon their plans immediately. The mansion on the hill, converted into Alliance headquarters, hummed with activity. Former society parlors now housed legal clinics and training sessions. Victoria's prized ballroom served as a community meeting space, its crystal chandeliers illuminating strategy sessions and skill-sharing workshops. Regular reports kept Marcus informed of his former enemies. Victoria remained institutionalized, her doctors describing little improvement. Cameron wrote occasionally from prison, seeking deals or consideration. Marcus archived these letters unopened, their existence alone proving the completeness of his victory. Another letter from Cameron, Maggie reported. This one addressed to Lily. Add it to the files, Marcus instructed. His words stopped matching the day they served that eviction notice. The training program flourished, each graduate carrying Marcus's lessons to new communities. They learned more than craft. They learned observation, strategy, the importance of precise timing in complex operations. Your students have that look, Arthur observed. The same focus you had when planning Victoria's downfall. Marcus nodded, watching a young apprentice disassemble a complex chronometer. They're learning what I learned. Power doesn't guarantee victory. Precision does. His relationship with Evelyn deepened gradually, neither rushing to define its evolution. Their shared experiences fighting Victoria and Cameron had created understanding that needed no labels. "You've changed everything," she said during one late-night strategy session. "Not just Willow Creek. The whole way communities fight back." The historic district thrived under Alliance protection. Buildings Cameron had marked for demolition now housed successful businesses, many owned by graduates of Marcus's program. The community's character strengthened as residents learned to defend their interests effectively. "Property values rising again," Arthur reported. "But this time it's benefiting local owners. No predatory development, no forced sales." Marcus's personal transformation remained evident in how he handled threats to his new mission. The ruthlessness that Victoria's betrayal had awakened found purpose in protecting others, his tactical brilliance now serving community defense. "Seattle developer tried bribing city council," Lily announced. "Used our evidence to expose him. His company's stock dropped 60% in one day. Make sure Victoria's doctors receive the news coverage," Marcus instructed. "Let her see another failure of her methods." The workshop expanded again, acquiring adjacent buildings to house new programs. Each space served multiple purposes: skills training, community organizing, strategy development. Marcus moved between them, overseeing operations with the same precision he brought to restoration work. "You've built something remarkable," Evelyn observed, watching him teach advanced techniques to senior students. "Something that will outlast all of us." Marcus adjusted a student's grip on specialized tools. "They thought destroying my workshop would break me. They never understood what they were actually attacking." The Timekeepers Alliance grew beyond his direct control, chapters developing their own strategies while maintaining his core principles. Marcus focused on training, preparing others to carry forward his methods and mission. His revenge, complete and devastating, had transformed into something larger. The passion for justice awakened by betrayal found expression in teaching others to protect themselves. Victoria and Cameron's attempt to destroy him had instead created a force for lasting change. The grandfather clock in his workshop chimed midnight. Marcus stood among his students and supporters, surrounded by the steady rhythms of timepieces and community action. The trusting craftsman was gone, replaced by someone stronger. A man who had learned to fight back and now taught others to do the same. Epilogue. 10 years later, Marcus Hawthorne stood before the annual Timekeepers Alliance Conference, addressing representatives from over 200 chapters nationwide. The organization had grown beyond his initial vision, becoming a powerful force in community preservation and anti-corruption efforts. "A decade ago, we began this journey because of two people's greed," he told the assembled crowd. "Today, we've prevented thousands of similar schemes across the country. What started as one man's revenge has become a movement." The conference center, built in Willow Creek's restored historic district, represented everything Victoria and Cameron had failed to destroy. Local businesses thrived along carefully preserved streets. Marcus's original workshop, now a national landmark, trained new generations in both craftsmanship and community defense. "Latest numbers are in," Lily reported during their morning briefing. At 30, she'd become a respected journalist and the Alliance's public face. Her investigations had earned multiple awards, and her methods were taught in journalism schools. "We've blocked over $5 billion in predatory development this year alone. Saved 43 historic districts." Marcus reviewed the reports with the same precision he brought to his restoration work. The years hadn't softened his ruthlessness, they'd refined it. His name still struck fear in developer boardrooms, his reputation for dismantling corrupt schemes intact. "Dallas Group testing our borders," Maggie announced. Now the Alliance's chief of operations, she maintained an international network of informants. Using updated versions of Cameron's tactics, Send them the standard package, Marcus instructed. Add the new prison photos. Cameron's latest parole denial should make interesting reading. Cameron remained incarcerated, his attempts at early release thwarted by evidence Marcus strategically released before each hearing. The former developer's empire had been dismantled so thoroughly that the term Drake treatment entered legal vocabulary, describing complete corporate destruction. Victoria's fate proved equally lasting. The psychiatric facility became her permanent residence after multiple failed release attempts. Her doctors reported continued paranoid fixations on Marcus and the Alliance, her once sharp mind trapped in loops of conspiracy theories. She asked for another meeting, Evelyn reported. Her medical expertise had expanded to include a comprehensive study of displacement trauma, her research helping communities understand development's psychological impacts. Same response as always? Marcus nodded. He'd never visited Victoria, never responded to her letters. His revenge included ensuring she lived with the knowledge that he'd transformed her attempt to destroy him into a force for national change. The Sterling family name faded into obscurity. Victoria's parents died in reduced circumstances, their fortune depleted by lawsuits and restitution payments. The mansion on the hill, now the Alliance's headquarters, stood as a symbol of power transferred from wealthy elites to community control. Arthur Pembroke's journalism school, funded by Alliance resources, trained investigators in techniques he and Lily developed. We've got graduates at major papers nationwide, he told Marcus during their weekly strategy session. They know what to look for, how to expose corruption before it takes root. Marcus's personal life found equilibrium. His relationship with Evelyn deepened into partnership, their shared experiences creating understanding that needed no formal declarations. They maintained separate residences but spent most evenings together, discussing cases or simply enjoying companionable silence. You never really retired, she observed one night, watching him review plans for a new training facility. There's always another battle, he replied. Always someone else thinking they can destroy communities for profit. The workshop expanded into a campus, occupying most of the historic district's central block. Different buildings housed specialized programs, restoration training, legal clinics, investigative journalism classes, community organizing workshops. Each space reflected Marcus's attention to detail and strategic thinking. Portland chapter reports success, Lily announced, entering with fresh intel. Developer tried using shell companies to hide ownership. Our people traced everything back to old Cameron connections. Send the documentation to his prison counselor, Marcus instructed. Let him see another failure of his methods. The Timekeepers Alliance developed specialized divisions. The legal team, trained in Marcus's comprehensive approach, gained a reputation for destroying corrupt developers in court. Investigation units used techniques refined during Victoria's takedown. Community organizers taught resistance strategies proven effective against corporate pressure. They're calling it the Hawthorne Doctrine, Arthur reported, showing Marcus a legal journal. Complete dismantling of predatory business structures while protecting community assets. Marcus's training program evolved beyond craftsmanship. Students learned to recognize manipulation tactics, understand complex financial schemes, and develop effective countermeasures. His experiences fighting Victoria and Cameron became case studies in community defense. Your methods have spread worldwide, Maggie noted during a staff meeting. Had inquiries from European preservation groups last week. Asian heritage organizations too. The Alliance's influence extended beyond development issues. Their investigative techniques exposed corruption in local governments, corporations, and financial institutions. Marcus's approach to dismantling complex schemes proved effective across multiple domains. San Francisco team prevented a tech takeover, Lily reported. Used your strategic framework. The company withdrew all expansion plans when our first evidence package arrived. Marcus's reputation grew more formidable with time. Developers researched potential targets thoroughly, often abandoning projects at the first sign of Alliance involvement. His name became synonymous with corporate accountability and community empowerment. They call it the Hawthorne effect, Evelyn mentioned. When corrupt businesses realize we're watching, they self-destruct trying to cover their tracks. The historic district flourished under Alliance protection. Buildings preserved from Cameron's destruction housed successful businesses, many owned by program graduates. Property values rose naturally, benefiting local owners rather than corporate investors. Restoration program has a 3-year waiting list, Arthur noted. Everyone wants to learn your methods, both mechanical and strategic. Marcus maintained his edge, his ruthlessness now focused on protecting communities nationwide. The betrayal that forged his transformation remained fresh, driving him to prevent others from experiencing similar attacks. Developer group threatening small businesses in Miami, Lily announced. Using updated versions of Victoria's social pressure tactics, send them her commitment records, Marcus decided. Show them where that path leads. The workshop remained his center, its rhythms grounding him as his influence expanded. He still restored timepieces, finding satisfaction in precise mechanical work. But these skills now served larger purposes, teaching others to understand and affect complex systems. You've created something permanent, Evelyn observed during a rare quiet moment. Something that will outlast all of us. Marcus adjusted a student's technique on a particularly delicate restoration. They thought destroying my workshop would break me. Instead, they gave me reason to build something unbreakable. New challenges emerged as society evolved. Digital threats, cryptocurrency schemes, AI-driven development strategies. The Alliance adapted, incorporating new technologies while maintaining Marcus's core principles of precision and community defense. Blockchain analysis caught another shell company network, Lily reported. They're getting more sophisticated. But so are we. Marcus's personal fortune, built from recovered assets and program successes, funded expansion into emerging battlegrounds. The Alliance developed cutting-edge tools while preserving traditional skills, combining old wisdom with new capabilities. Next generations taking up the fight, Arthur noted, watching advanced students practice investigation techniques. Your legacy's secure. The years brought perspective, but no softening of resolve. Marcus never forgave Victoria or Cameron, never responded to their attempts at contact. Their betrayal remained a source of strength, driving him to ensure others could defend against similar attacks. Another letter from Victoria, Maggie reported. Same claims of redemption and regret. Add it to the archives, Marcus instructed. Let future students learn from her failure. The Alliance's success attracted attention from powerful interests. Corporate groups offered partnerships, political figures sought connections. Marcus maintained independence, remembering how Victoria's social connections had enabled her betrayal. They don't understand, he told Evelyn. This was never about making deals. It's about making sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else. His methods spread through unexpected channels. Business schools studied the Hawthorne approach to community defense. Law enforcement adopted Alliance techniques for investigating complex fraud. Social movements learned from his strategic thinking. You've changed how people fight back, Lily observed. Given them tools to protect themselves. The workshop campus expanded again, adding specialized facilities for new programs. Each space reflected Marcus's strategic vision, designed to serve multiple purposes in community defense. International inquiries increasing, Maggie reported. Groups worldwide want to learn your methods. Marcus's legacy took shape in the lives he influenced. Students carried his teachings to new communities. Investigators applied his techniques to expose corruption. Activists learned his strategies for effective resistance. The next generation's ready, Evelyn noted, watching advanced students lead training sessions. They understand what you built here. Marcus stood in his original workshop, surrounded by the steady rhythms of timepieces and community action. The space that Victoria and Cameron had tried to take from him had become a source of national change. His personal revenge transformed into lasting impact. They never understood what they were attacking, he told a group of new students. A workshop isn't just a building. It's a place where things get fixed, where broken systems get repaired or replaced. The grandfather clock struck 12, its chimes echoing through spaces that now served a greater purpose. Marcus Hawthorne, no longer just a craftsman but a force for national change, allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. His enemies had tried to destroy him, but their actions had instead created something indestructible, a legacy of resistance and justice that would continue long after they were forgotten.